The film begins with John Rambo, a veteran of the Vietnam War, traveling to a lake house in search of Delmar Berry, an old comrade. When he gets there, he regrettably finds out that Delmar died from cancer more than a year ago. It appears that he was exposed to dangerous gases while serving, and after the war he had a hard time surviving. Rambo, overcome with grief, extends his condolences to the soldier's widow and presents her with a picture of Delmar alongside him and the other members of their unit. Rambo enters the town of Hope while still on foot, searching for a meal and perhaps a place to stay the night. Will Teasel, the town's watchful and paranoid sheriff, is drawn to his appearance due to his long hair and military-inspired coat. The sheriff then takes Rambo to the outskirts of the town and explains that it is his responsibility to keep drifters out. Rambo nevertheless disobeys the sheriff's admonition and enters the town once more. Rambo is detained on suspicion of vagrancy, resisting arrest, and carrying a concealed knife as a result of infuriating Will. Rambo refuses to help the police with some paperwork while he is at the police station. This leads the officers, led by the vicious Chief Deputy Art Galt, to treat him harshly, which causes him to relive the torture he went through in the Vietnam War. After being told to strip, Art strikes Rambo in the lower back with his baton. Then, Art gives the order to another officer to clean Rambo up by using a fire hose. Rambo loses control of his emotions when they use a straight razor to shave him. He starts a fight and uses his lethal maneuvers to defeat every police officer. Shortly afterwards, he takes back his knife, robs a passing motorcycle, and flees. Along mountain roads to the woods, Will pursues him in his police car, but the chase is cut short when his vehicle flips over. Rambo leaves the motorcycle in the interim and dashes into the forest. Will, who is able to survive, quickly puts together a search team with helicopter, dogs, and automatic weapons. Rambo finds some wire and an old piece of canvas as he climbs the mountain. He ingeniously creates a temporary tunic out of these materials for himself. He comes across the edge of a high cliff while trying to avoid being apprehended and decides to carefully descend it. However, Art sees him from the helicopter and fires just as he is about to do so. Our hero is forced to jump off the cliff because he has no other option. Rambo suffers an injury to his right arm as a result of the fall, but he survives because a group of trees cushion his landing. Rambo hides behind a tree as Art carries on shooting. Then, in response to Art's assault, he throws a rock at the helicopter, shattering its windshield and briefly impairing the pilot's ability to control it. Art becomes unbalanced as a result, and he plunges to his death onto the sharp rocks. Following these incidents, Rambo attends to a severe cut on his arm before attempting to turn himself in, claiming that Art's death was an accident and that he no longer wants to harm people. But when the policemen retaliate with gunfire, Rambo is forced to flee into the woods. A short while later, a fellow officer at the base contacts Will and his deputies via radio. The subject of their investigation is John Rambo, a Vietnam War veteran, Green Beret, and Congressional Medal of Honor recipient, according to this communication. Most of the deputies are terrified by this revelation, but Will is still committed to getting his revenge. The team is concerned that Rambo might switch roles and start hunting them in the following scene as Will leads his deputies on a manhunt into the challenging forest. Their worst fears are realized when Rambo uses non-lethal guerrilla tactics and booby traps to defeat the small, uncoordinated police team. He successively injures each deputy severely. A heavily disguised Rambo confronts Will with a knife to his throat when he's the last survivor. He warns the sheriff that if he continues the pursuit, he will start a war that they won't believe in. Rambo walks back into the woods after delivering this warning while obtaining a walkie-talkie from one of the hurt deputies. Later, we observe that a base camp is set up close to the location. Will calls in the National Guard and the State Patrol to help him capture Rambo. Rambo, who is listening from the other side using the radio he stole, is seen receiving a message from one of the officers. The officer claims that their forces have encircled him from all sides. Sam Troutman, a colonel in the U.S. Special Forces, shows up at the base camp shortly after and introduces himself as Rambo's mentor and former commanding officer. He explains to the sheriff that Rambo has been prepared for combat and has been trained to survive in hostile environments. Sam advises that Rambo be given permission to flee to the next town in order to defuse the situation, and then be given permission to submit peacefully. Will, who is certain that Rambo is utterly outnumbered, chooses not to take the advice. After that, Will instructs Sam to speak with Rambo on the radio and try to persuade him to surrender. Rambo, however, declines to enter. Instead, he criticizes Will and his deputies for their mistreatment and claims that they drew first blood. Rambo turns the radio off after that. He didn't know it, but by that point Will's men had triangulated his location on the mountain. Rambo skillfully hunts a wild pig for dinner in the meantime, and then heads to an abandoned mine. He starts a bonfire there to prepare his meal and get some rest. The National Guard unit surrounds the entrance to the abandoned mine as dawn breaks the following morning, trapping Rambo inside. The guardsmen start firing in the direction of the mine in defiance of Will's orders to wait for him to arrive. Rambo is trapped inside after they even fire a rocket launcher, collapsing the door. The guardsmen start to rejoice after they think they have killed Rambo. The pursuers are not aware that he has survived by making it farther into the tunnel. Rambo uses pieces of his clothing and some old fuel he finds inside to make an improvised torch. He deftly makes use of the flame as a sign of airflow to locate a way out and to the surface. After that, he goes further underground, wading through rat-infested water. Rambo eventually discovers a way out after some searching, but he takes precautions to hide from the officers pursuing him. Soon after, he commandeers a passing U.S. Army cargo truck that appears to be carrying an M60 machine gun and enough ammo. In order to get back to the town, he throws out the driver and drives through a roadblock. The truck driver eventually informs the police station that Rambo is still alive. Will is shocked by this, and in a fit of rage, he commands his men to kill Rambo right away. Later, some police officers catch sight of Rambo and start driving after him. Rambo initially tries to ignore them, but when the police start shooting at him, he loses control and crashes into their car. Shortly after, Rambo encounters a group of police officers standing in his path at the end of a bridge. However, he accelerates the truck instead of slowing down, breaking through the blockade. Rambo detonates a gas station before taking off with an M60 machine gun in an effort to divert the police. Then, as the citizens flee, he begins a shooting rampage throughout the town. Will issues a warning to all civilians, sensing the danger, telling them to leave the streets and find a safe place to stay. After that, he gets ready to pursue Rambo, but Sam suddenly approaches him. The colonel tries to persuade Will to let Rambo go one more time because he realizes that the sheriff is outmatched. Will, however, is unfazed and climbs to the building's roof armed and ready to put a stop to this once and for all. In the meantime, Rambo destroys the majority of the town's power transformers using his expertise in guerrilla warfare. This completely darkens a section of the town. He enters a sporting goods store close to the police station a short while later. He scatters ammunition and gunpowder across the floor, ignites it, and creates a distraction. Rambo eventually spots Will on the roof and cautiously makes his way inside the police station to confront him. Rambo dives under the skylight while using the threat of gunfire as cover because he knows the sheriff is waiting on the rooftop. Will responds to him right away, exactly as he had hoped. After taking note of his location, Rambo fires back through the ceiling, wounding the sheriff. Will as a result tumbles to the floor after falling through the skylight. Rambo then steps on top of him and prepares to kill him, but Sam arrives just in time to stop him. Sam tells the soldier that unless and until he surrenders, there is no chance for him to survive. Sam tries to convince him by pointing out that he is the last surviving member of his elite unit. It is not how he wants Rambo to pass away. The armed police surround the police station as they are having their conversation, but Sam tells them to stop firing. Rambo now releases his burden, describing the horrors of war and his harrowing experiences. He describes the agony of seeing his friends die in Vietnam and how his post-traumatic stress disorder prevents him from holding down a job. Rambo also talks about how his fellow Americans treated him with contempt after he returned home. He bitterly complains that despite making such great sacrifices for his country, they ignored him. Rambo is baffled as to how he was a war hero in the army but could not even be relied upon to work in a parking lot when he returned to America. He recounts the tragic death of one of his fellow soldiers at the hands of a Vietnamese child soldier before breaking down in tears due to emotional exhaustion. Rambo finally turns himself in and is taken into custody by federal authorities after expressing all of his hurts and emotions in front of Sam. The injured Will is being treated by paramedics while being taken to the hospital in an on-call ambulance. Rambo is led into a police van and out of the police station as the movie comes to a close.